Let me ask you something. When was the last time someone ruined your day? Maybe it was a rude comment. Maybe it was bad news. Maybe it was something as small as a stranger cutting you off in traffic. And yet, you carried that frustration with you for hours, maybe even days. You let someone else's words, someone else's actions, someone else's problems take control of your mind. But what if you didn't have to? What if, no matter what happened around you, your peace remained untouched? What if negativity, stress, and even fear lost their power over you? I'm not talking about pretending to be strong. I'm talking about real, unshakable peace. The kind that no criticism, no failure, and no external pressure can take away from you. This isn't just a theory. It's a skill. And like any skill, it can be learned. For over 2,500 years, Buddhist teachings have shown people how to master their own minds, how to break free from suffering, how to rise above negativity. And today, I'm going to share with you 8 powerful lessons that can help you do the same. These lessons aren't about escaping life. They're about facing it with clarity, strength, and wisdom. They're about learning how to stop overthinking, stop reacting, and start living fully in the present moment. So if you've ever felt exhausted by stress, if you've ever wished you could stop caring so much about what other people think, if you've ever wanted to take back control of your own peace, then keep watching. Because what you're about to learn could change everything. Lesson 1. The true strength lies in not hating those who hate you. Let me ask you something. Have you ever wasted hours, maybe even days, thinking about someone who wronged you? Maybe it was an insult, a betrayal, or just someone treating you unfairly. You replay the moment in your head, imagining all the things you could have said or done. But the more you dwell on it, the worse you feel. Now, here's the real question. Did your anger change anything? Most people believe that hating those who hate them is a sign of strength, that fighting back makes them powerful. But in reality, it's the opposite. The moment you allow hatred to consume you, you have already lost. Nelson Mandela once said, "Resentment is like drinking poison and then hoping it will kill your enemies." Imagine a man carrying a burning piece of coal in his hands, hoping to throw it at someone else. The longer he holds on to it, the more it burns him. Hatred works the same way. It doesn't destroy the person you hate, it destroys you. Buddhist philosophy teaches us something radical. True strength is not in retaliating. It's in refusing to be controlled by hatred at all. The Buddha himself faced criticism, opposition, and betrayal. But he never fought back with hate. He simply let it pass through him, like wind through an open window. There's a famous Buddhist story about a samurai who approached a monk and insulted him, trying to provoke a fight. The monk simply smiled and asked, "If someone gives you a gift, but you do not accept it, to whom does the gift belong?" The samurai, confused, replied, "To the person who offered it, of course." The monk nodded. "Then why should I accept your anger?" This is the essence of true strength. When you stop accepting the gift of negativity, it loses all its power over you. And this isn't just philosophy, science confirms it. A Stanford University study found that holding on to anger increases cortisol levels, keeping you in a state of stress for hours, sometimes even days. But when you choose to let go, your brain releases serotonin and dopamine, chemicals responsible for happiness and inner peace. This means that forgiving others isn't about them. It's about freeing yourself. A powerful example of this is Eva Moses Kaur, a Holocaust survivor. She and her twin sister were subjected to brutal medical experiments by the Nazis. Decades later, she shocked the world by publicly forgiving the man who had tortured her. When asked how she could forgive such cruelty, she said, "Hate only hurts me. Forgiveness is my freedom." Her story teaches us a profound truth. Letting go of hate is not about weakness. It is the ultimate act of self-liberation. So how do you apply this in real life? The next time someone tries to provoke you, pause. Instead of reacting, ask yourself, do I really want to let this person control my emotions? Instead of holding on to anger, try shifting your focus. Recognize that their hate is their burden, not yours. And if you ever struggle to let go, just remember this. You can be free today, not when your enemies apologize, not when justice is served, but the moment you decide that their hate is not your burden to carry. Lesson 2. The power of true humility. Have you ever met someone who always has to be the smartest person in the room? Someone who refuses to listen, always needs to be right, and never admits their mistakes. Now, be honest. Have you ever caught yourself acting that way? It's easy to believe that knowledge equals wisdom, that the more we talk, the more we prove our intelligence. But true wisdom is not about knowing everything. It's about realizing that there is always more to learn. Socrates, one of the greatest philosophers of all time, famously said, "The only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing." This idea is echoed in Buddhism, where the Buddha taught that a wise person approaches life with an open mind, always willing to learn. There's a famous Zen story about a professor who visited a monk to learn about enlightenment. The monk served him tea, filling his cup to the brim, and then kept pouring. The tea overflowed, spilling everywhere. The professor exclaimed, "Stop! The cup is full. No more will go in." The monk smiled and said, "Like this cup, your mind is already full of your own opinions. How can I teach you anything unless you first empty your cup?" This is the essence of humility. If we are too full of ourselves, we leave no room for growth. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Science backs this up. A famous study from Cornell University, known as the Dunning-Kruger effect, found that the less people know, the more they overestimate their abilities. Meanwhile, true experts tend to doubt themselves, not because they are incapable, but because they understand the vastness of what they don't know. And history has shown us what happens when arrogance replaces humility. In the early 2000s, Blockbuster was at the top of the movie rental industry. When Netflix approached them with an offer to collaborate, Blockbuster's executives laughed. They believed that online streaming would never replace DVDs. They refused to empty their cup. Fast forward a few years, and Netflix revolutionized the way we consume entertainment. Blockbuster? Completely wiped out. This is why the wisest people are often the most humble. They don't seek attention. They don't pretend to have all the answers. They listen more than they speak. So how do we cultivate true humility in our own lives? Try this. Next time you're in a conversation, use the 5-second rule. Before you respond, take a deep breath and count to 5. Ask yourself, am I responding to learn or just to prove a point? And if you ever find yourself resisting new ideas, remind yourself, the moment you think you know everything is the moment you stop growing. Because real wisdom isn't about proving you're right. It's about staying open. Lesson 3. Do not let others control your life. Have you ever felt like you're living a life that wasn't really yours? Maybe you made a career choice based on your parents' expectations. Maybe you hold back your true opinions because you're afraid of judgment. Maybe you constantly seek approval, adjusting yourself to fit what others want. If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. From childhood, we are conditioned to believe that our worth is tied to the opinions of others. We want to be liked. We want to be accepted. And because of that, we let the world dictate our choices. But here's the truth. The more you let others control your life, the further you drift from who you really are. There's a famous Buddhist parable about a man, his son, and their donkey. One day, they were traveling through a village with their donkey. The father rode the donkey while the son walked beside him. Upon seeing this, the villagers whispered, "Look at that selfish man, making his son walk while he rides." Hearing this, the father got off and let his son ride instead. But in the next village, people scoffed, "Look at that disrespectful boy, riding while his old father walks. So, they both decided to ride together. But then, another group criticized them. That poor donkey. Carrying two people is cruel. So they got off and walked. But in the next town, people laughed. How foolish. They have a donkey, but don't use it. No matter what they did, someone always had something to say. And that's exactly how life works. No matter what you do, people will always have opinions. If you try to please everyone, you'll end up pleasing no one, including yourself. This isn't just philosophy, it's science. Psychologists call this the spotlight effect, the idea that we believe people are watching and judging us far more than they actually are. In reality, most people are too busy worrying about themselves to care about what you're doing. And here's something even more surprising. Scientists have also identified the false consensus effect, a cognitive bias where we assume that other people care about our choices much more than they actually do. The truth? Most people forget what you did or said within a few hours. Elon Musk understood this. Early in his career, people laughed at the idea of Tesla. Critics said electric cars would never succeed. Even after founding SpaceX, many experts predicted failure. But he didn't let public opinion dictate his actions. He stayed true to his vision, ignoring the doubters, and changed the world in the process. So here's the question. Are you living your life for yourself or for the expectations of others? If you find yourself constantly seeking approval, try this, the mirror test. Stand in front of a mirror and ask yourself, if no one else's opinion mattered, if there were no expectations, no pressure, what would I truly want? And then, little by little, start making choices that align with that truth. Because at the end of the day, the only person who has to live with your decisions is you. Lesson 4. The art of deep listening. Have you ever had a conversation where you felt like the other person wasn't really listening to you? Maybe they were nodding. Maybe they were even responding, but you could tell they weren't truly present. They were just waiting for their turn to speak. Now, be honest. Have you ever done the same? Most of us think we're good listeners, but in reality, we listen to respond, not to understand. There's a famous story about the Buddha and a young man who came to him full of anger. The man shouted, insulted, and accused the Buddha of spreading false teachings. But instead of arguing back, the Buddha simply smiled and asked him a question. If someone offers you a gift, but you refuse to accept it, to whom does the gift belong? The man, confused, answered, it remains with the person who offered it. The Buddha nodded and said, then why should I accept your anger? This simple story carries a powerful lesson. Listening is not just about words. It's about understanding the emotions behind them. Science backs this up. Studies in neuroscience show that when we truly listen, we activate the part of our brain responsible for empathy and emotional intelligence. This strengthens our relationships, reduces stress, and even makes us better decision makers. In fact, research from Harvard found that people who practice active listening, fully focusing on the speaker without distraction, are rated as more trustworthy, more likable, and more influential. And yet, in today's world, true listening is becoming a lost art. Take Oprah Winfrey, for example. She is not just one of the most successful media personalities of all time. She is also one of the greatest listeners. Watch any of her interviews, and you'll notice something rare. She doesn't just ask questions. She listens with full presence, without interrupting, without rushing to respond. This ability to deeply listen has made her guests feel truly heard, often leading them to open up in ways they never expected. But here's what happens when listening fails. In 1986, NASA launched the Challenger space shuttle despite engineers warning that the O-rings on the shuttle could fail in cold temperatures. Their concerns were ignored. NASA officials were in a rush to proceed, dismissing the warnings. The result? The shuttle exploded 73 seconds after takeoff, killing all 7 crew members. a catastrophe that could have been prevented if only someone had listened. So how can we become better listeners? Try this, the 2-second rule. Next time you're in a conversation, before responding, pause for 2 seconds. Use that moment to process what the other person is really saying. Are they asking for advice or just needing to be heard? Are they upset or just tired? That small pause can transform the way you communicate. Because at the end of the day, true listening isn't about responding. It's about understanding. Lesson 5. Accept the worst. Free yourself from fear. Every day, people lose jobs, relationships end, businesses fail. But what if I told you the worst thing that happens to you might actually be the best? Most of us spend so much time trying to avoid failure, rejection, and hardship. We tell ourselves, I can't handle losing my job. I'd be destroyed if my relationship ended. If I fail, I'll never recover. But here's the paradox. It's not the bad event itself that causes the most suffering. It's our resistance to it. The Buddha taught that suffering comes not from reality, but from our attachment to how we think things should be. There's a famous Zen story about a farmer whose horse ran away. His neighbors came to console him. Such bad luck? The farmer simply shrugged and said, maybe. The next day, the horse returned with a group of wild horses. His neighbors cheered, what great fortune! The farmer, again, said only, maybe. A few days later, the farmer's son broke his leg while trying to tame one of the wild horses. His neighbors gasped, how terrible! The farmer responded, maybe. A week later, the army came to draft young men for war, but skipped the farmer's son because of his broken leg. The neighbors rejoiced. You're so lucky. The farmer, as always, simply said, maybe. The moral of the story? You never truly know if something is good or bad. It's only our judgment that makes it so. And science proves this too. A study from Yale University found that people who accept adversity rather than resisting it have lower stress levels, better mental health, and even stronger immune systems. J.K. Rowling understood this. Before she became one of the best-selling authors of all time, she was at rock bottom, unemployed, divorced, and living in near poverty. But instead of letting fear paralyze her, she embraced it. In her words, rock bottom became the foundation on which I rebuilt my life. She accepted the worst, and in doing so, she freed herself to move forward. But what happens when we don't accept? Take Abraham Lincoln. Before becoming the president who shaped American history, he lost multiple elections and failed in business. If he had let those failures define him, he would have never reached his potential. Psychologists call this negativity bias, the tendency of the human brain to focus more on negative events than positive ones. We overestimate how bad things will be and underestimate our ability to handle them. So how do we break free from this cycle of fear? Try this, the worst-case scenario exercise. The next time you're afraid of something, don't run from it. Instead, write down the absolute worst-case scenario. What's the most catastrophic thing that could happen? Then ask yourself, could I survive this? 99% of the time, the answer is yes. And when you realize that, even if the worst happens, you will still be okay, the fear loses its grip. Because true freedom isn't found in avoiding failure. It's found in accepting that even failure isn't the end. Lesson 6. Beware of the illusions of fortune. In the late 1990s, Mike Tyson was one of the richest athletes in the world. With over $400 million in earnings, he had mansions, luxury cars, and everything most people dream of. And yet, within a few years, he lost everything. Expensive habits, poor financial choices, and the constant pursuit of more left him bankrupt, proving a hard truth. Wealth, when uncontrolled, can destroy just as much as it builds. Most of us believe that more money, success, and material wealth will bring us lasting happiness. But what if that's just an illusion? There's a well-documented phenomenon in psychology called the hedonic treadmill. The idea that no matter how much our external circumstances improve, we eventually return to our baseline level of happiness. Consider this. Studies show that lottery winners are no happier 1 year after their win than they were before. Why? Because human beings adapt. The excitement of a new car, a bigger house, or a promotion fades. And soon, we find ourselves chasing the next big thing, believing that happiness is always just around the corner. The Buddha understood this thousands of years ago. He taught that attachment to wealth, status, and possessions creates suffering, not because these things are bad, but because they are impermanent. There's a well-known Buddhist parable about a king who had everything: power, riches, and luxury. But he was deeply unhappy, constantly anxious about losing what he had. So he sought out a wise monk and asked, "How can I find peace?" The monk handed him a ring with an inscription, "This too shall pass." The king was confused. The monk explained, "When you are in great sorrow, read this, and it will remind you that pain is temporary. But when you are celebrating great success, read it again, and it will remind you not to cling to joy either, for nothing lasts forever." Modern science supports this. A study from Harvard found that beyond a certain point, more money does not significantly increase happiness. In fact, people who focus too much on material wealth often experience higher levels of anxiety and depression. Even billionaires acknowledge this truth. Elon Musk, one of the richest people in history, once said, "Possessions weigh you down. The more you own, the more you worry." And Jim Carrey famously stated, "I think everybody should get rich and famous and do everything they ever dreamed of so they can see that it's not the answer." So, if wealth and status don't bring lasting happiness, what does? The Buddha's answer was contentment, the ability to find peace with what you have, rather than constantly chasing more. Here's a simple exercise: the gratitude shift. Instead of focusing on what you don't have, spend 2 minutes every day writing down 3 things you're grateful for. Studies show that people who do this regularly experience higher levels of happiness, reduce stress, and even better sleep. Because true wealth isn't measured by what you own. It's measured by how little you need to be happy. Lesson 7. See failure as a stepping stone. What if I told you that failure is the only way to succeed? It sounds strange, doesn't it? We spend our whole lives trying to avoid failure. We see it as something shameful, something to be feared. But what if the people who succeed the most are actually the ones who fail the most? Take Michael Jordan, for example. Today, he's known as one of the greatest basketball players of all time. But in high school, he was cut from the team. Instead of quitting, he used that failure as fuel, waking up at 5 a.m. every morning to practice. Years later, he would say, "I have missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I have lost almost 300 games. I have failed over and over and over again in my life. And that is why I succeed." The Buddha understood this long before modern athletes did. There's a famous story about a monk who was struggling with meditation. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't quiet his mind. Frustrated, he approached the Buddha and said, "I keep failing. My thoughts won't stop. I feel like I'll never reach enlightenment." The Buddha smiled and asked, "Have you ever seen a baby learning to walk?" The monk nodded. "When the baby falls, does that mean it will never walk?" The Buddha asked. The monk shook his head. "Exactly," the Buddha said. "Every fall is just a step toward balance." Science supports this idea. Research from Stanford University found that people with a growth mindset, those who see failure as a learning opportunity, are more likely to succeed in life than those who avoid failure out of fear. On the other hand, history shows what happens when people refuse to embrace failure. Take Kodak, for example. They were once the leaders of the photography industry, but when digital cameras emerged, they ignored them. afraid of changing their business model. They feared failure so much that they refused to innovate. The result? They went bankrupt while companies like Canon and Sony thrived. The truth is, successful people don't avoid failure. They learn from it. So how do we shift our mindset? Try this: the failure reflection exercise. The next time you fail at something, write down 1. What went wrong? 2. What did I learn? 3. How can I improve next time? By doing this, failure becomes a lesson, not a setback. Because the truth is, you don't fail when you fall. You fail when you stop getting back up. Lesson 8. Contemplating death, the path to a meaningful life. On January 15, 2009, U.S. Airways Flight 1549 struck a flock of birds and lost both engines. Captain Chesley Sully Sullenberger had just seconds to react. As he later said, "I knew at that moment that this could be the end." When Sully later spoke about that moment, he didn't talk about fear. He talked about clarity. "I suddenly knew what really mattered. It wasn't money, career, or status. It was my family, my loved ones, the time I had left." Most of us avoid thinking about death. It's uncomfortable. It's terrifying. It's something we push aside, pretending we have endless time. But what if embracing death is the key to truly living? The Buddha taught that contemplating impermanence is one of the most powerful ways to awaken wisdom. He even encouraged his disciples to meditate in cemeteries, surrounded by decaying bodies, to truly understand life's fragility. This might sound extreme, but modern psychology supports the same idea. A University of Kentucky study found that people who regularly reflect on their mortality actually experience higher levels of gratitude, purpose, and joy. Instead of making them fearful, thinking about death motivates them to live more intentionally. Consider Steve Jobs, the man who revolutionized the world with Apple. He famously said, "Remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make big life choices." When he was diagnosed with cancer, Jobs realized that time was his most valuable resource. He stopped wasting energy on things that didn't matter and focused only on what truly counted. And that's the truth. Death is not a tragedy. It's a teacher. There's a powerful Buddhist story about a grieving mother who lost her only son. Desperate, she carried his lifeless body to the Buddha and begged him to bring the boy back. The Buddha replied, "I will help you, but first, bring me a mustard seed from a house that has never known death." The woman searched from home to home, but every family had lost someone. Slowly, she realized that suffering and death are universal. No one escapes them. And in that realization, she found peace. The lesson? Death is not something that happens to us. It is something that happens to everyone. So how can we use this wisdom in daily life? Try this, the memento mori practice. Every morning, before you check your phone, take 30 seconds to remind yourself, "One day, I will die. But today, I am alive. How will I make this day count?" This isn't about being morbid. It's about being awake. Because when you truly understand that time is limited, you stop wasting it. You stop holding grudges. You stop chasing meaningless things, and you start focusing on what truly matters. Because the question isn't if we will die. The question is, will we truly live before we do? Conclusion: living with unshakable peace and wisdom. Take a deep breath. Now, imagine yourself 1 year from today. Will you still be triggered by negativity? Still afraid of failure? Still chasing things that don't truly fulfill you? Or will you look back and see that this moment was the turning point? Light bulb, because real peace isn't something you wait for. It's something you create. You create it when you stop carrying the weight of hatred. You create it when you no longer let others dictate your path. You create it when you stop running from fear and start facing it. And you create it every single day in the choices you make. So the question is, what will you choose? Because in the end, it's not about acting like nothing bothers you. It's about becoming the kind of person who is truly unshakable. But remember, wisdom means nothing if you don't apply it. So take this lesson, live it, practice it, share it. And if you want to keep learning, keep growing, and keep walking this path, I invite you to continue the journey. Backhand index pointing right. Watch the next video on related topic, because this wisdom goes even deeper. Thumbs up if this added value to your life. Let me know by liking this video. Speech balloon, tell me in the comments, which lesson changed your perspective the most? Bell, and if you're ready for more, hit that subscribe button, because this is just the beginning. 1 year from now, you'll look back at today. Make sure it's the day everything changed.